Good evening, I'm Ces Orenia Drilon.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Sean Yao.
The big stories tonight. On day 6 of the conflict between Israel and Iran, the Philippines is bracing for the impact by way of nationals caught in the crossfire and a looming fuel price surge that could be triggered soon.
Also in the news today, two allies of the Dutertes. Former presidential spokesperson Roque denies he is in Germany to seek asylum after the Netherlands rejected his application for the same. Meantime, Duterte Youth party list's registration has been canceled by Comelec.
And President Bongbong Marcos is growing weary of issues in Philippine education, a sector which he believes has been neglected. He is also frustrated over how the K-12 program turned out.
Marami ang mag-aagawan for sure ng mga flights palabas ho ng Israel pag nagbukas na yung airspace.
We're starting already with the assumption that the oil prices will in fact go up, and I cannot see how it will not.
Despite the worsening conflict between Israel and Iran, President Bongbong Marcos does not see any need for the mandatory evacuation of Filipinos there, well, at least for now. So far, 150 Filipinos in Israel are appealing for repatriation, along with 21 government officials who also got stranded. The big story from Mobile Journal, Arles de los Santos.
These missiles came from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Corps. Israel's missile interceptors may be showing signs of wariness, but they're not backing down. It launched 60 aircraft, which all fired back against Iran. Tehran had since activated its air defense system as a shield against Tel Aviv's missile, and the war rages on. At this point, nearby nations in the Middle East can only watch and wait if the conflict between Israel and Iran will escalate further. For now, life goes on. At this wedding in Lebanon, the exchange of missiles became a backdrop. As for Filipinos also witnessing the still unfolding crisis, they're trying their best to stay out of harm's way. The Philippine Embassy in Tel Aviv says at least 150 Pinoys have already appealed for repatriation, but not Nonami. She can't bear to leave behind Aba, her 71-year-old ward for more than a decade now, who's ill and bedridden.
Nakukonsensya ako, sabi ko ako, nandun ako na nagtatago, ikaw ay naiiwan dito.
And even if she's ready to leave, Nonami still can't, as the airspace in Israel remains closed. It's the same situation for 21 local and national government officials now stranded in Israel. That include representatives from Ascenso party list, 9 mayors, 4 vice mayors, and DILG representatives. They are currently cooped up in a bomb shelter.
Dami pong conferences na nangyayari dito sa Israel. At in fact, meron ho tayong mga government officials who are in town for seminars. So apektado rin po sila yung pag-uwi nila. So everybody will try to be everywhere, no? Hindi lang po tayo. Marami ang mag-aagawan for sure ng mga flights palabas ho ng Israel pag nagbukas na yung airspace.
So far, 224 had died from airstrikes in Iran, 24 in Israel. No Filipinos in the death toll. But our embassy is closely monitoring a Pinay caregiver who was critically wounded by a bombing during the first few days of the deadly exchange. President Bongbong Marcos says Migrant Workers Secretary Hans Kakdak is now headed to Jordan to facilitate the repatriation of Filipinos in the Middle East. But for now, evacuation of our nationals in Israel and Iran is still voluntary.
Ang naging problema natin sa pag-evacuate sa kanila ay dahil sa gera, maraming sarado na airport. Kaya nag-ahanap tayo ng ruta kung saan sila mailabas. We generally leave it to each individual or each family to decide for themselves whether or not they feel safe or whether or not they would like to be evacuated.
The president has also ordered the Department of Energy to keep tabs on the oil supply in the Philippines. On Tuesday, the department has begun inspection of one of the largest oil depots in Manila. Oil companies have been advised to keep track of inventories of crude for 30 days and petroleum for 15 days. This is to temper more price hikes that can be triggered by the Middle East conflict.
Ibig sabihin, kahit walang dumating sa Pilipinas ng supply, walang delivery sa atin, kasi wala naman tayong source dito na local eh. Pag nag-import tayo at wala nang papasok na importation, in 15 days, meron pa rin tayong supply.
Mobile Journal Arles de los Santos. We are One News.
Now let's get to know the situation in Israel from the eyes of one of our kababayans there. And joining us tonight is Danilo Pagkalinawan II, a student assistant for special children in Israel. Magandang gabi sa iyo, Danilo, from the Philippines. We're glad that you could join us tonight. Walang siren ngayon, walang alert.
Wala naman po.
Ikwento mo yung
Thanks, God,
karanasan mo kagabi na nagre-ready ka na para makapanayam namin nang biglang, ano ba yung napansin mo?
Kagabi po ay 2 times po na nagkaroon ulit ng alarm. Yun nga po, instead na kami ay magpe-prepare ng mga gagamitin pa namin or mag-dinner instead, nagkaroon po ng alarm. Even in the middle of the night, 2 times again in the middle of the night. Napakahirap po dahil lagi kaming kulang sa tulog kahit na papasok pa sa trabaho yung iba.
Kung ganun, yung iba ba nagpapagabi na lang sa bomb shelter? Option ba yon na doon ka na lang matulog?
Meron pong gano'n, napipil na gusto na lamang magstay sa bomb shelter para for their safety dahil nahihirapan nga po silang magtatakbo palagi. Kagaya na lang kagabi yung kaibigan namin dito, kasama namin dito sa hostel na provided ng ating embassy. Sabi niya sa amin, much better yata doon na lang ako sa amo ko o di kaya dyan sa bomb shelter na magstay. And nakatatlong shelter kami na pinuntahan dahil kagabi hanggang madaling araw puno yung mga shelter na napuntahan namin. So ang hirap siksikan kami doon kagabi dahil naka 2 times siya. So medyo feeling namin again, mauulit yung nangyari doon sa may bahay namin.
Lumipat ka dyan dahil nasira yung dati mong tinitirhan?
Yung eksakto kong tinitira po namin ng mga kasamahan ko, yun po yung tinamaan po ng I think, yung impact lamang po yun. Hindi po talagang yung missile yung bumagsak doon. Bali sa kabilang street pa bumagsak, pero nadama yun sa amin dahil sa lakas ng impact niya.
At itong tinitirhan mo ay inayos ng embahada?
Hindi po. Bali, nirelocate po kami. Ang sabi ng government ng Israel, yung mga tumutulong po na social worker is dadalhin po kami sa Jerusalem, which is meron silang provided na hotel doon for 1 month para sa aming mga Pinoy. Hindi po kami pumayag dahil malayo po sa mga trabaho po namin. And yung ating embahada, ayan po, sila po yung nagsagot ng hostel na malapit po dito sa location po ng mga trabaho po namin.
Yan ba yung just to clarify Danilo, yung sinasabi kasi nung nakapanayam namin si Philippine Ambassador Eileen, sabi niya na meron daw parang isang building, kumbaga na may mga rooms where Filipinos can stay temporarily and provided daw ito ng Philippine government. Is that where you're staying or iba pa?
Hindi po, ito po ay isang hostel na sa Israelis. I think yung sinasabi po ni Sir ay yung po yung nasa Tel Aviv po yata. Kami po ay nandito sa isang place pa na tinatawag ay Rehoboth City.
Okay.
So now it's the 6th day na ng palitan ng putukan between Israel and Iran. Kamusta ang kalagayan mo at ng mga kasamahan mong Pilipino? Kamusta ang yung takot, yung trauma, paano naiibsan yun?
Ay, hindi po namin masabi. Talaga pong lagi po kami ninenervous na ngayon. Dahil minsan namali lang yung sa cellphone namin, meron lang the same nung notification ng warning nila, the same lang ng sounds, pero tuloy yung mga kaba namin, talagang nagtatakbuhan na kami. Sasabihin lang namin na, teka, hindi pala ito yun. So talagang, ang hirap pong parang trauma na din talaga. Kumbaga, ewan ko pa, paanong, siguro kung talagang masasabi nilang end of the war na talaga. So doon lang kami maiibsan yung trauma namin siguro.
And Sir Danilo, ito nga po, pinapakita namin yung videos, yung pictures, nung nangyari po dun sa inyong tahanan, sa inyong bahay, and our hearts really go out to you because napaka-devastating and heartbreaking po talaga nang nangyayari dyan. And it is already the 6th day of the attacks. Naiisip nyo na po bang magpa-repatriate dahil over 150 Filipinos na daw po ang nag-request? Isa po ba kayo doon?
Sa ngayon hindi pa po ako nakakapagpalista and gusto po namin ma-settle muna kung ano yung mga dapat po namin ma-claim dito sa nangyari po sa amin.
Can you elaborate claims that you can make to the Israeli government? Or sa work ba?
Opo. Sa Israel government, kaya saka po dun sa kagaya po ng friend ko na binuhat ko nung gabi nang nadamay yung bahay namin. Na-hospital po siya, and then sila ngayon ay naglalakad dun sa health insurance niya, and then kung ano po yung maibibigay ng gobyerno sa kanila. And sa part po naman namin, yung mga gamit po namin at saka mga property po namin na belongs po sa amin na napakarami po nun. Bawat isa po sa amin, mga pag-aari po ng mga importante gaya ng mga alahas o mga personal belongings na talagang napag-ipunan po namin bago namin po nabili. And then may positive na nasabi naman po sa amin na maaari po na i-compensate po kami para doon.
So ang mga kagamitan mo, iniwan mo na doon? Kunyari, may computer, etc.?
Opo, pero po marami pa rin po marami pa rin po yung mga gamit namin po doon na naiwan. Meron po ako na-retrieve ng second day na after po niya, nadali po yung bahay namin. Nagpilit po ako na pumunta doon at nagpaalam ako. Tapos sa likod na ako pinadaan, doon sa may ibabaw nung pinangyarihan. After po ng mabako, nagkaroon po ng medyo daan doon at nakababa po ako. Na-retrieve ko po yung service na ginagamit kong e-bike at saka yung mga construction tools ko. Very important po sa akin kasi minsan yun din po yung nagiging trabaho ko minsan.
Ang importante, buhay ka. Di ba?
Number one, yun nga po daw. Yun nga po talaga ang pinaka-importante. At nakakausap po ang pamilya dahil buhay pa po ako.
May mensahe ka ba, Danilo, sa iyong pamilya nandito sa Pilipinas?
Sa pamilya ko po na nasa Pilipinas, wag na po kayong mag-alala masyado at sa tulong po ng gobyerno ng Israel at ng ating gobyerno ay nasa maayos naman po kaming kalagayan. At safe naman po kami. Sa aking ina, wag po kayong mag-alala at magkikita-kita rin po tayo pagdating ng time.
Sir Danilo, ano po ba ang naririnig nyo from the Israeli government? Magbubukas na daw ba soon ang airspace para makalipad na yung mga tao, makapag-evacuate? And itong pag-process ng insurance, which is the reason why you are choosing to stay, kailangan ba physically present? Hindi po ba yan magagawa electronically na lang para at least nasa safe na lugar na po kayo?
Talagang gusto mo siyang pauwiin, ah.
Well, tama ho yan. Maganda ho yan. Talagang dapat mag-prepare na din talaga kami. Siguro, within this day, meron na rin kaming result. Binigyan na kami nung pinaka manager nung bahay na titira namin, kami tenant, no? Binigay na sa amin yung kanyang information. So, after this, makakapag-decide kami kung ano talagang gagawin namin. Kung magpapalista rin kami or what.
Anong masasabi mo tungkol sa alok ng gobyerno na maaring bigyan kayo ng 4 na buwan na sahod para kung kayo ay pumiling umuwi, para kayo ay, kumbaga, makapag-settle muna dito sa Pilipinas habang naghahanap ng bagong trabaho? Anong reaction din ng mga ibang kababayan natin dyan?
Ma'am, the first reaction is that true? Hindi po ba fake news yan? Kasi po, dito ho ay hindi naman po sa maliit sa ating kinikita sa Pilipinas. Kung masipag ka lang po dito, ay kikita ka talaga ng gusto, no? Totoo ba talaga kaya yung alok ni Sir Kakdak na 4 to 6 months susuplayan nyo kami at parang susweldo kami sa kanya? So kung gano'n, may nagtanong mo sa amin kanina totoo ba yun or what? Kasi magpapalista ako, sabi ng isang kasama namin.
Totoo naman.
Which is good.
Totoo
Which
naman.
is good.
Well, we'll hold him to his word. We'll hold him to his word. At saka, meron naman kayong kontribusyon, di ba, kayong mga OFWs sa pondo. Kaya dapat, pagka may mga ganitong sakuna na hindi inaasahan, doon kukuha ng pondo.
Sir Danilo, matanong ko lang din po, kamusta naman ang supplies dyan ngayon sa Israel? Because we heard this report na parang hirap na daw po kayo sa tubig dyan. Tama po ba yun?
Kasi hindi kami sanay lang uminom dito sa may waterline nila dahil yung Israelis nga bumibili rin ng mga bottled water and naglibot kami, naghanap kami. Merong tubig na binibenta yung isang supermarket dito na napakaliit na 6-pack. Napakamahal. Sobrang mahal. So, hindi naman yun ang regular na binibili namin. And wala talagang mabili na kagaya ng dati. So, ikot hanggang makatagpo kami. Napakalimitado na. And isa sa mga, kumbaga parang magpapanik buying ka ba or what? Ano bang meron? Ano bang nangyayari talaga? Ito na ba talaga yung magkakaroon ng gusto? Or ang hirap mag-isip, ang hirap din bigyan ng eksaktong word. Ano na ang eksaktong natin mangyayari ngayong araw, yung mga panahon na to.
What about other basic necessities bukod sa tubig, pagkain, fresh food? Available pa ba? Or puro yung mga delata na lang and packed food?
Hindi, ma'am. Yan naman po ang maganda rito sa government nila, no. Nandiyan po, yung pagdating sa mga foods, nandiyan talagang ready lagi sila na open ang mga supermarket. May mabibili kami talaga. Yan lang tubig, medyo pahirapan siguro. Medyo nauhuli lang kami dahil may mga trabaho or talagang nauubos-ubusan lang and the other time. Ngayon, hindi pa rin ako sumubok ulit dahil may mga ibang bagay kami nagawa. Malalaman. Pero goods naman ang mga pagkain.
Oo. Danilo, I suppose mahirap talagang isipin pero we'd like to ask you kung 50-50 ba? Ano bang desisyon mo na umuwi o manatili dyan? Kung anong tansya mo?
Meron po akong, kung sa 100%, may 80% na po akong naiisip na talagang iyon ang gagawin ko after this mga proseso.
All right. Well, we hope you will keep safe and also the rest of our kababayans na kasama mo. Ikaw ba'y nagtatrabaho pa? Patuloy ang trabaho doon sa special needs school, right?
Yes, ma'am. Sabi po ng aking manager dun sa school ay until hindi nagiging okay yung yung situation, wala muna po kaming pasok.
Okay. Okay, ingat kayo dyan. Maraming salamat. That was Danilo Pagkalinawan, the second joining us from Israel. Maraming salamat.
In other news, former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque seems to have failed in his bid or his asylum bid in the Netherlands and has turned to Germany for refuge. That is according to Department of Justice Secretary Boying Remulla. The DOJ chief added that they are working on having Roque's passport canceled or have him extradited, quote, when the time comes.
Alam ko, hindi siya nabigyan ng asylum ng Netherlands. Kaya nasa Germany na ang pagbibigay nito kung sa pakasakali. Hintayin natin. Basta yan, pwede naman file ng extradition yan pagdating ng panahon. Pero baka hindi na kailangan kasi kakancelin naman ang passport niya. Pag naging undocumented alien yan, ay pwede nang kunin ng Interpol.
But Roque was quick to deny Remulla's claim, calling it fake news. In a statement, the lawyer said this is already the second time that the Justice Secretary gave wrong information about him. The first one being that he had multiple passports. Remulla, Roque believes, is getting his information from the rumor mill. Roque further clarified that his trip to Germany was a pre-planned activity and was upon the invitation of the Filipino community there, and that he is now back in The Hague. Roque is facing an arrest warrant here in the Philippines for qualified human trafficking cases related to pogos.
We're just going to take a quick break, but coming up, no proclamation and now no registration. Duterte Youth party list's bid to stay in the House of Representatives hits another snag. That story and more when the big story returns. Stay tuned.
You're watching the big story here on One News. Protests continue in cities across the United States following a surge of ICE or Immigration and Customs Enforcement raids there. Under the second administration of President Donald Trump, ICE reported over 100,000 arrests since January. That's almost double the figure from the same time last year. The White House set a daily quota from 1,000 to 3,000 arrests, raising concerns the agency may start targeting minor cases to hit the target. As for Filipinos in the U.S., the Inquirer reported 2 Filipino green card holders detained on separate occasions upon returning from a trip to the Philippines. Llewellyn Dixon and Rodante Rivera were arrested by border authorities at the Seattle-Tacoma airport over decades-old convictions. Dixon was detained on February 28 for an embezzlement case 20 years ago, while Rivera was held on May 18 for an old nonviolent offense. Both have since been released after immigration judges ruled their old convictions no longer met the standard for deportation. And let's hear more updates on what happened to both cases, as well as the situation of our kababayans in the U.S. Joining us tonight is Bea, who is part of Tanggol Migrante Network in Washington, a migrant rights advocacy group at the forefront of calls to protect Filipino immigrants detained by ICE. Welcome to the big story, Bea. We're holding your surname at your request for, I guess, your protection. Tell us the mood that's prevailing among the Filipino communities scattered all over the U.S.
Hello po, ako po si Bea from Tanggol Migrante at saka the National Alliance for Filipino Concerns o NAFCON. Kami po ay isang alyansa ng iba't ibang mga organizations dito sa US who are really responding to the issues ng mga Pilipino dito sa US at saka sa Pilipinas din through advocacy and action. And really to respond to your question of what is the mood right now, I think people are angry, upset, confused, but through the work of our network, also very hopeful in our fight. And we are very determined that we will continue to advocate for Filipinos in detention.
Aside from those 2 cases, do you know of others? It's quite difficult to get information, as well as perhaps Phil-Ams arrested in the raids of ICE.
Yeah, so I can, here in Washington, we know of quite a few Filipinos who are in detention, and it was really through starting with 2, si Auntie Lynn at saka si Kuya Dante, who were actually able to connect us with different Filipinos that we did not know of at the Northwest Detention Center. I think that's really to show that while we don't know the firm numbers of Filipinos in detention, I think it is very concerning that that information is unknown, but it is really through this network and through our ties with Filipinos who are seeking for support where we're able to get that information.
So do you have figures of those currently in detention?
In Washington State, we know of at least 10, but of course, across the U.S., there are still different cases where we know that there are more individual cases. But again, that's our estimate. We are really trying to do our best to understand more what are the true figures of Filipinos in detention, especially as the Trump administration is ramping up arrests to 3,000 per day.
Any idea if those numbers that you just quoted, Bea, are those just from this new Trump or current Trump administration?
I believe this is from the current administration. Talaga po, they have a quota on immigrants, which is so inhumane, I think. So those are some of the numbers that we know right now through our research.
We were able to talk to a ambassador to the U.S., Babe Romualdez, and he said, you know, as long as wala kang record, wala kang ginawang mali, you should be able to consider yourself like safe from these raids. Would you agree with that statement, or are there things slipping through the cracks?
I definitely think that that's not true, and it's also very, I think, dismissive of a lot of the fear that many green card holders are experiencing here, or whether you have a green card or not. I think the Trump administration has been very shameless in targeting whoever. Some of this rhetoric, I think I've heard news of people, of them even detaining people who are homeless at this point because they're not able to show proof of a license. So I don't think it's a fair statement to say that it's just if you have some sort of conviction, because at this point, Trump is definitely fear-mongering to raise and heighten this repression and intensifying the repression of all migrants and immigrants here in the U.S.
Okay, but Bea, tell us about the sentiment of the Filipino-American community there in the United States. Is it true that the community right now is divided in a sense that, while some are against it, there are also those who support the deportations, the arrests, the detentions?
I think there are some sentiments, but I think especially with the cases of Antilin and Kuya Dante, people are starting to take a turn and really see themselves in Antilin and Kuya Dante. I think so many Filipinos abroad can see their stories in those who have been detained. I think, for example, for myself, I grew up in a care home in a big community of Filipino caregivers who had different vulnerable statuses, but at the end of the day, we looked out for each other. I think we have a common unity that Filipinos, we work hard and we sacrifice so much to send money and support to our families back home that I think because we've been able to share the stories of Antilin, Kuya Dante, ATM, and Kuya Max. Those are a few of the Filipinos in detention that we know. I think people are starting to change their view that there are good versus bad migrants. I think we can all agree that yung mga karapatan ng Pilipino, no matter where you are, should be upheld.
What concrete action do you want from the Philippine government or from our embassy there in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think the Philippine government has they've made many statements and have even sought to take credit for the support of migrants in detention, but in reality, they haven't really adequately responded and fulfilled the urgent requests for support that have been made by Filipinos and their families. I think just to give some context of what Tanggol Migrante is, it's both the Filipinos who are in detention, but also their families, and they're really the ones who can refute these claims that the Philippine government has been addressing some of these concerns. But really what these families are wanting is urgency and being proactive in these cases. We've been working, again, closely with the families of those detained, and in spite of all of the efforts to reach out, Romualdez keeps stating that the embassy's door is open for us, but he has still yet to come to the table and meet with us and directly hear our concerns. So I think that's really what we're wanting the Philippine government to do, is to actually advocate for the release of Filipinos from unjust detention and to be proactive in the monitoring and advocating for those who are being really targeted by the Trump administration right now.
Bea, we thank you for your time, and the big story will be closely in touch with your group to monitor the cases of the 10 who are still in detention. Thank you so much for your time. That was Bea from Tanggol Migrante Network in Washington.
In other news, the COMELEC Second Division has canceled the registration of the Duterte Youth party list in a vote of 2-1. According to the decision, the group's registration has been void from the start since they failed to abide by jurisdictional requirements. First is the rule on publication, where anyone who wants to join party list elections should get their list of nominees published in at least 2 broadsheets. Another is the requirement for them to face a hearing on their application. But the poll body also clarifies that the group can still file a motion for consideration within 5 days. The COMELEC Bank is also yet to decide on the complaints, which go back as far as 2019. If Bank rules against Duterte Youth, then they could lodge the appeal at the Supreme Court. Duterte Youth amassed more than 2.3 million votes in the midterm polls, garnering them 3 seats in the 20th Congress.
Ang issue po dyan ay issue ng nag-comply ba sa requirements ng accreditation yung mismong naturang party list. Ibig sabihin, meron ba siyang publication at meron ba siyang hearing. Ang sabi po ng COMELEC Division, voting 2-1 ay wala po yung dalawang requirements na yan, which are mandatory requirements, and therefore, ang sabi po nila ay void from the very start yung accreditation. And therefore, dapat kinakancel po yung accreditation ng party list po na yan.
The Senate Impeachment Court and the lower house are at it again, trading barbs over the delay in the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte. Senate Impeachment Court spokesperson Reginald Tongol first responded to statements by the House prosecution team that the senator judges are delaying the impeachment process. Tongol reminded the prosecution team that it's going up against the VP's defense team and not the Senate Impeachment Court. And it would be best for the prosecution to just prepare for the trial and comply with the court's order. It's been 8 days since the Senate Impeachment Court ordered the prosecutors to certify that the House did not violate the 1-year ban on filing impeachment complaints and that the House of the 20th Congress will pursue the case against Duterte. House prosecutors have yet to issue a formal reply.
Actions speak louder than words, at sa aming mga abogado, mas matimbang po ang ebidensya kesa sa mga salita. So tingnan na lamang po natin ng ebidensya. Ano po ba ang kanilang mga na-file na? Kahit po yung pagpapareceive nung ordinary notice of appearance lamang po ng depensa ay hindi pa po nila na-receive. Ano po ba ang motibo para...
Meantime, House spokesperson Princess Abante immediately responded to Tongol's statements. Abante maintained the impeachment court's order is illegal. Abante said the House prosecution is prepared and ready for the impeachment trial. It's up to the Senate, she says, to start it forthwith as what is stated in the Constitution.
Yung mga requirements na hinihingi pa sa prosecution panel, hindi yan kasama sa Constitution eh. Ang requirement lang ng Constitution, a verified complaint that is sufficient in form and substance. That was voted upon by the members of the House of Representatives. That was transmitted to the Senate.
Time to pause for another very quick break, but when we return, President Bongbong Marcos has had enough of the current K-12 program and other issues hounding the education sector. That's in part 2 of his interview with our Cheryl Cosim coming up in a bit. Keep it here.
Thank you for staying with us here on The Big Story. President Bongbong Marcos is frustrated over persistent problems in the education sector, including the K-12 program, which he finds ineffective at this point. In the second part of his interview with 1PH anchor Cheryl Cosim, the president also addressed issues close to the heart of many ordinary Filipinos: rice and security. Here's the story.
President Bongbong Marcos admits he is as let down as others with the K-12 program. For him, it only added costs and effort and failed on what it promised to deliver: make high school graduates ready for employment.
It is the same frustration that I expressed in the first place. Kasi it's costing more for the parents. Sa 10 years, wala namang advantage. Wala naman naging advantage. Hindi rin nakukuha sa trabaho.
But while the K-12 is still in place, the president says the government has to make it work. The chief executive is also as frustrated with other issues hounding the education sector, from lack of classrooms and other facilities to teachers' shortage.
Sipin mo, 160,000 ang kulang natin na classroom. Paano nangyari yun? Basta't pinabayaan na lang.
Then there are the issues teachers have to deal with, aside from being required to double up on duties and wear as many hats as possible in order to keep up with the needs of students and their schools.
May performance audit at the end of the year para sa mga teacher. So pag sinasabi, kalahati ng klase mo, bagsak, mahina kang teacher. Bababa yung performance audit mo. So kahit na hindi marunong magbasa, ipasa mo na. Yun ang nangyayari. Pero we will remedy that. The performance review is not going to be based on that.
On rice prices, Marcos highlighted record-breaking palay harvests from 2023 to 2025. With production up, he says lower prices are becoming sustainable without relying on subsidies.
Baka hindi alam nga ng tao na in 2023, we had the largest the largest crop of palay in the history of the Philippines. So our production is slowly going up. Since our production is already going up, bababa ang cost of production. Ang pagbenta ng NFA, pababa ng pababa. That's why I'm so confident masabi sustainable.
Magagawa po kaya yan bago matapos ang inyong termino?
Magagawa yan.
The administration is not only confident of the sustainability of the Cheaper Rice Initiative, it also has big plans on making the Kadiwa program fully funded by the national government.
We are providing the volumes that are sufficient for 51% of our population. That's for now. It will all be 20 pesos.
Hintayin natin yan, Mr. President.
Pareho tayo.
Another gut issue for Filipinos: security. His marching order to new PNP Chief Nicolas Torre III: make Filipinos feel safe again. Patrol the streets, destroy seized drugs immediately, and restore trust in law enforcement.
Even if the statistics are telling you crime rate is down, drug seizures are up, that's not enough. We instigated already this new program. That's the only way that people will feel safe.
Paano po rin kaya mararamdaman yan sa like the barangay level, sa communities?
Well, what is happening, because we were concentrating doon sa mga big time na drug syndicate, drug lord, yung mga small time. Kaya yung cops on the beat, that's the solution to that.
The third and last part of my exclusive interview with President Marcos airs on Friday, June 20. Catch it on the social media platforms of 1PH, 1 News, News 5, True FM, and the Presidential Communications Office. I'm Cheryl Cosim. We are 1 News.
Well, as the president just said, the country's education system is still facing numerous challenges, top of which is a learning crisis brought about by lack of resources and infrastructure, disparities, and access to quality education. And to talk about this, we have Pasig Representative Roman Romulo in the flesh. Congressman Romulo is the co-chairman of the 2nd Congressional Commission on Education, or EDCOM. Good evening, Congressman Romulo.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming to The Big Story.
Yes, thank you for the invite, Ces, of course, Sean and Pauline.
You would concede we are in the education system is in a crisis right now.
yes, that's why we have EDCOM 2. That's why there are many reforms in the pipeline and hopefully to be implemented soon by the Department of Education.
But you are not frustrated. Well, we were talking earlier before the program. You are quite hopeful. Where is this optimism coming from? Because we are very pessimistic.
Oh, because yes, actually, the education sector faces many challenges. But I think we can prioritize the challenges. And the number one priority is to face the congested curriculum, which is really affecting the quality of education. So that is something that is doable. And once we do that, we fix the most essential thing, which is functional literacy. Once we fix that, which is reading comprehension, then the Filipino on his own, her own, they'll be able to cope with whatever challenge. That's why, importante talaga ngayon ay let us fix the curriculum.
Maganda yung sinabi mo kanina, parang nabulaganan lang tayo, but this problem was festering even before because of the way the government reads the data, or what is it? Tell us how we got to this.
Well, maybe, when I'm asked about this, I always say that maybe we really just lost focus on what is essential in the learning community, which is really the basics. Reading comprehension, writing, mathematics, grade level, and GMRC. I think at one point what we wanted really was, we overloaded, we congested the curriculum. At one point we had more than 15,000 competencies. Right now, senior high school, we have 31 subjects that we want our students to learn. And I think this came about because we trusted Filipinos. We knew that we were smart. We knew that Filipinos are smart. We knew that we can rely on them. And the
we
data,
can't anymore.
and the data that we got, I think, misled us because we've had this PSA FLEMS survey. Yes.
Please talk about that. I wanted to hear that.
Yes, we've had this PSA FLEMS survey ever since before. And I think many Filipinos were always wondering, they would start, that was, I think, started in 1992 or 1994, then that's every 5 years. And every time that survey comes out, I think Filipinos would be surprised that they would say 90+% of Filipinos are literate. And then we see our NAT results, our ELNA, Carla, those are the assessments given by the DepEd. We see our international assessment results. That's the PISA, SEA PLM, TIMS, saying otherwise. And then you have our own PSA saying, walang problema, 90+% are literate. And that's
Kasi
where...
mali ang tanong.
Mali ang tanong eh.
The metrics have been updated though, right?
Yes, now it's been updated. That is why hopefully we will get a better picture. I was telling Cess earlier that last year when we were reviewing the FLEMS PSA in one of the councils, we noticed that there was a question that asked, they were asking a Filipino, nag-graduate ka ba ng high school? If you answered yes, the assumption was, literate ka na. And that question, in fact, sinabi naman ng PSA ngayon, they dropped that question already. So in fairness, wala na yon.
So doon nanggaling yung 91% literacy?
I think that's part of it. Plus, they added questions to test. Ang tinetest nila doon talaga is reading comprehension, a little mathematics, which are also questionable. But again, at least yung pinaka-blatant na question na kung graduate ka ng high school, assumed na kaagad. Mali yun eh. Kasi obviously, the NAT exams, the National Achievement Test given by DepEd, nakikita natin, hindi naman talaga mataas ang scores ng lahat ng ating mga learners. International assessments also show that. Hindi rin naman, sama nga ng loob natin pag lumalabas yung PISA exam. Di ba? Parang sinasabi natin, bakit tayo nasa huli? So obviously, we have to also correct our data. We have to correct the numbers that how we ask questions so that we get the right context of where we are now. And I think that's where we are now. That's why it has been identified that what we have to do is really focus on reading comprehension, math, grade level appropriate, GMRC, and sciences.
How long will that take? You're optimistic nga that it can be done in how long?
For me, maybe as long as we implement it fully from K to 12, probably 3-5 years, we will see a big change. And I say this because a year ago, 2 years ago, USAID ABC Plus already had a project here in Regions 5 and 6. They had a project wherein they introduced, in fact, they introduced the Carla, which is now used by DepEd. They introduced a system of teaching
What is
and
Carla?
assessment.
Sorry.
It is an
Ang dami
assessment.
mong mga acronyms. I have a trouble catching.
Yes. It's comprehensive reading
Okay.
assessment.
Okay.
It's a way of teaching, di ba?
No, no.
A methodology.
The Carla is the assessment.
test.
It's the test
Assessment.
to determine the reading comprehension.
Doon nang galing yung 19.1 million.
Iba yan.
Iba pa yun.
That is the FLEMS
That's yung
PSA.
FLEMS.
That is the FLEMS. Ang Carla is grades, after you exit grade 3.
Okay.
And then
So basic pa.
Basic, yung key stage 1.
Okay.
After that, papasok na yung National Achievement Test, yung NAT. They also give that. Yun ang DepEd test.
Anyway, sorry, interrupted your train of thought. You were saying you are optimistic because...
Yes, because there was a pilot done before Regions 5 and 6, about a year, 2 years ago, wherein they introduced a method of teaching, reading comprehension, mathematics, and based on the Carla results that they came out with, there was an improvement. Improvements were shown. Of course, meron pa rin naiwan. But then, still positive tayo na within 1 year, medyo mataas rin yung improvement. So, based on that, that is what we're all telling DepEd, apply na natin yan.
So,
Kasi
apply na ba?
in a way, I think they will begin to do that. But the thing that DepEd is doing now, una, we started Monday.
Yes.
From grades 1 to 3, babawasan na nila ang subjects. It will now be 5, 5, 6. 5 subjects sa grades 1 and 2, 6 sa grade 3 because they added science. Tama yun. And all subjects will be focused on reading comprehension, math, grade level appropriate, and may GMRC, yung good manners and right conduct. And then now, pagdating natin sa 11 and 12,
Doon na mas...
doon naman now, magpa-pilot na rin ang DepEd. They will pilot in about 800 schools.
Yung 2 tracks na lang, di ba?
2 tracks na lang. And then, they will limit it to 5 subjects, 5 core subjects. And then, electives na lang yung iba. Which is good because makaka-focus na tayo. And sa amin po, ang sinabi, we held hearings on this in the House. Ang suggestion namin is may naiiwan na 8 subject na GE sa first year college. Ang suggestion nga namin, let's not reinvent the wheel. Kopyahin na lang natin yung 8 subject na yun. 4 sa grade 11, 4 sa grade 12. And then in the next hearing, CHED and DepEd came back to us. They confirmed, tama ho, 8 yan. There are 8 remaining. Pero, sa 8 yan, 5 na lang pala ang wala. That is why yung 5 yun yung inadopt ngayon ng DepEd as their 5 core subjects. Yung 3, according to them...
Ano yung 5 yun at ano yung 3?
Yung 3 na lang. Yung 3 kasi yun yung controversial. Yung 3 kasi, yun yung parang world history. Nandun yung philosophy, ethics.
Okay.
Yun yung naging controversial, yung ethics na yun. And then the other one was, I think, contemporary art.
Okay.
Parang
So yung mga
ganun,
mas
art siya.
arts and humanities.
Parang gano'n. Pero yung ethics, naging issue yan eh. Kasi sinasabi nila wag alisin. But as in the next that hearing, we were telling the CHED and DepEd, of course, final say sila. Pero whether it's 8 or 7, imagine kahit 7 lang, that is 21 units. Pag tinanggal mo yan, babawasan mo ang kolehiyo ng 1 whole SEM. And mas magastos sa kolehiyo. In fact, yun naman talaga yung original intent ng K-12 or one of the original commitments. Sinabi nila sa atin nun, tanggapin nyo na ang K-12, babawasan naman yung kolehiyo. But that never happened. But now, hopefully, now that CHED and DepEd are talking, baka sakali kahit 1/2 SEM, half a SEM, mawala. And then meron pang isang SEM pala.
Alam ba ni Presidente yan? Kasi
Meron
na-frustrate siya sa K-12.
Pero yung K-12 itself is frustrating, Ses, for the simple reason that when that was passed in 2013, the commitment amongst the commitment were job ready for quality jobs. Hindi nangyari. Secondly, sabi, college ready. What is happening now in college? Our colleges have bridging programs. Nagdagdag na tayo ng grades 11 and 12.
Tapos may bridging program.
Sa college may bridging pa.
Kailangan pang mag-remedial bago
Magre-remedial
mag-start.
ka pa. In fact, says Sean Polina, there are cases that now, kung magkamali ka ng strand na piliin,
You can't.
malilimit rin yung programs that you can choose in college. Example, if you want to go into engineering,
Kailangan science.
STEM. Kung hindi ka nag-STEM,
Hindi ka pwede mag-engineering.
hindi or may bridging programs ka. So bakit natin pinahirapan? And that is where I think many Filipino families are getting their frustration from. Na parang
That's why they hate K-12.
Oo, kasi yung commitment hindi naman ganito lang, even yung job ready. What do we give our tech voc graduates now? We give them NC2 mostly. Ano ibig sabihin ng NC2? Under our own Philippine Qualifications Framework, it means may skills ka, pero hindi ka pa pwedeng mag-isa. May nakabantay pa sa'yo.
Very
You're not
quickly
job
lang,
ready.
Roman, bago kayo nag-adjourn, may proposal yung both houses na magkaroon ng cabinet cluster.
Yes.
Are you in favor of that?
Well, we passed that resolution
Yes.
and I authored the one from the House.
Yes. So is that
It's
going
your
to
idea.
come through?
That's an
follow?
EDCOM 2 idea, in fact. I think that is essential kasi when we try-focalized, remember nung 90s, hiniwalay natin.
Yung
Dati
CHEDEC.
DEX ata eh. Hiniwalay natin. Nagkaiba-iba nung direction eh. So dapat talaga mapagsama sila because
Parang whole of government approach
Yes.
na.
Kasi sis,
Crisis
ang
na.
teachers ng DepEd, saan nila nakukuha? Graduates ng college natin, education. So kailangan yung curriculum, alam naman talaga. Dapat nag-uusap sila kung ano yung tamang
Oo
curriculum.
nga naman.
Kasi
Congressman,
sila yung tuturo eh.
I'm very sorry we're running out of time, Kong, no? But I needed to ask about the no-fail policy. Yung mga estudyanteng pumapasa kahit
That's your
regardless of
advocacy
their...
Pinapasa lagi.
Oo, regardless of their performance. Bakit ba may ganun, Congressman? And how can we address that?
Ako kasi, Pauline, to be honest with you, I subscribe to I'm against right now of any retention of any student. And the reason for that, first, sa mahirap na pamilya, yung edukasyon talaga, pag it's a susi siya to a quality job.
Oo nga, pero kung hindi
Pero
naman.
kung hindi pumapasa yung anak niya, baka mamaya isipin niya, wag na lang. So baka hindi tumuloy. Secondly, sino ba may kasalanan?
Kayo.
Tayo, yes, kami sa gobyerno because the system congested the curriculum too much. So ayusin muna natin. Ang sinasabi ko nga sa DepEd, we should pass everyone, but then hold special classes para makahabol sa reading comprehension, grade level, and math. Pero kaya natin, yan ang ginawa ng ABC Plus in Regions 5 and 6. Yun ang sinasabi kong gawin natin. So there's hope talaga, kaya natin
So no learner left behind pa rin.
Except kung talagang ayaw nang pumasok naman talaga ng paaralan. Ayaw ko naman yung teacher pa yung maghahabol sa bahay para kausapin, bumalik. Kasi kawawa rin yung teachers eh. That's another problem that also should be discussed.
Wow, we didn't even talk about the money yet, the classrooms, etc. It's such a complicated.
But the classrooms in the House, we already passed on third and final reading. Alam naman natin na totoo, buildable space is a problem. So what we need to do is ask help from the private sector. So sa amin, we want to expand the voucher system to grades 1 to 6 also. Kasi
Para sa private schools?
kasi kung hindi nakasya sa kung quality naman yung private school, let's ask the help ng private school. Kasi the ratio we will never get kung pipilitin natin, pinupuno natin yung DepEd schools.
Yan din yung sinabi kagabi ni Benjo Basa sa atin na pabor siya doon sa voucher system. Pwedeng ibalik daw.
Yung amin, we passed
May
it
pera
already
para dyan? Mahal ang
expand.
private?
It's really a voucher. So, kahit na paano may sharing doon ng private.
Okay.
All right, well, teachers pa, pero wala nang time. Balikan na lang ulit,
Yes.
Congressman. Sige. Well, we thank very much EDCOM 2 Co-Chairman Pasig City Congressman Roman Romulo.
All right, and now for one day only, you can get closer to our national hero, Jose Rizal. And here's our big picture tonight. In celebration of the national hero's 164th birth anniversary tomorrow, June 19, barriers will be taken down at the Rizal Monument in Luneta Park to give the public a rare chance of taking selfies with Rizal's statue. In a Facebook post, the National Park Development Committee announced a photo time, which it called Rizal Up Close. That will be from 10 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. You can also catch other activities lined up for Thursday, including a wreath-laying ceremony at 8 a.m. in the iconic Luneta Monument. There are also interactive events such as Mirroring Rizal, the Oracle of Sibila Cumana, and Stamp a Souvenir. These are whole-day affairs happening at the Nolimitangere Garden. And that's it for the big story this Wednesday evening. Thank you so much for watching.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Hopefully the weather will cooperate tomorrow for the Rizal selfies. But we'll be back 7:30 p.m. See you then. Have a good night, everyone.
But coming up next, we have Favorite Play with Andre Felix and Cheska Liton Calaw na burin. Finally, you're back!
Oo, hindi. Siyempre, may event tayo yesterday. They launched the first ever Metatime trial by a sports brand. Past kasi sa Malaysia, sa Thailand, first time sa Philippines, October 19. I just want to say hi to your guest. Former neighbor ko yan.
Yeah.
Oh.
Pasig.
Kumakatok ako dyan. Anong breakfast nyo?
Talaga ba? Nakikialmusal ka?
Ha? Masarap ang breakfast kina Brother Roman, kina Kong Roman. Eh. But good to see you, Congressman Romana. Always great to see you. And of course, the ladies of the big story, thank you. Again, what a great show every night. Dami natin napupulot sa kanila. But di natin magagamit dito kasi sports tayo. Commercial naman muna tayo ngayon. Thank you to Cez, to Sean, to Pauline, and again, Congressman Roman Romulo. On our show tonight, we've got new reports on Tyrese Halliburton's injury amid the NBA Finals between his Indiana Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder, plus the start of the quarterfinals of the PBA Philippine Cup. Cheska, playoffs na.
I know. Ang bilis. Wait. Hold on. And we put the spotlight on Team Navi Philippines as they prepare to defend their crown in the women's class of Mobile Legends Bang Bang at the Esports World Cup.
Gusto na kitang sabayan nun. Bang Bang. I'm Andre Felix.
And I'm Cheska